So how do we do that? If you've gotten lost or you're not sure where we're at, we're going to start with L3, or you can keep building from the page that you're on. So if you need to go to L3, you can come over here, choose L3. This is where we're going to start. I like to just start this. You can either start building from right on here, or you can right click and choose duplicate page, and then you still have kind of your piece to go back to, and you can start building from here. So either way, if you want to duplicate the page or keep building from the page that you were on. So I'm still on my report, and I want to add a slicer so the user can choose what this column is going to look like. Ew, how do we do that? We're going to go over here in our fields in our data pane, and we're going to go find our field. There is a table out here. This is a quick launch specific table, and it's called selected time calc filter. And in there, you've got two options. We've got the selected time calc filter or the abbreviation. So this one is going to give us actually values that say month to date, quarter to date, year to date. This is going to say MTD, YTD, QTD, or YTD. So know your audience. Do they speak in acronyms? Do they need a whole word spelled out for them? That's going to determine which one we use. So I want to create what we call a slicer. Again, lots of different ways to do it. What we want to do is come in our canvas and make sure we don't have focus on anything. So click anywhere in the white space of your canvas and make sure that your table doesn't have those dark indicators around it. So here, I'm focused on my table. I'm going to click in the white space and pull the focus off or remove the focus. Now we're going to start building our visual. Use the visualizations pane and just go from top to bottom. So the very first thing I need to do is say, what type of visual do I want? I want a slicer. It's the visual or the icon right next to the table icon that looked like the little spreadsheet. If you hover over it, it says slicer, just click on that. And now we have a visual on our page. And then if we keep going down, it says, well, what field do you want in the slicer? We're going to use this selected time calc abbreviated filter. So I'm just going to go ahead and just check that box. And now I can see my values. I'm going to shrink this up a little bit. And now I have a slicer. This is just a filter that sits on the page of the report. So it's a very easy filter to get to for the users. To select a value, they just go ahead and check one of those boxes, and now look at your selected column. It populates with that value. So now you'll see that if I choose month to date, it populates with the values from the month to date column. I could do quarter to date, and I could do year to date. Why do I do this exercise? Why do I go in the same order? Because you're accountants and you don't trust me with my numbers. So I have to prove to you that that selected value is actually showing you your month to date or your quarter to date, your year to date. Hopefully I've built your trust on this one. But your user can just choose between those on what they want to see there if they want, and it will show them their value. So that's that selected value. It gives us a lot of flexibility with not a lot of maintenance. We've given them a slicer where they can choose what they want to see as they build. Perfect. Now with the slicer, this is what they call a list of values, which is really nice. I know that this list is never going to change. It's always going to be these 4 options. So a list of values is really nice. If I was doing this on something like that business unit and description where I have a lot of values and I can't possibly show all of them in one page, I might want to make this a drop-down list. To change your slicer and what it's going to, how it displays, we do that in that formatting section. So again, go to your visualizations pane, go to the format your visual section, and in here you see one called slicer settings. It's the very first option. And it says, what type of slicer do you have? We have a vertical list. A drop-down list, I'll just show you, you can watch mine for a second, gives me one box, but when the user clicks, it shows all the options. So this would be a great option for business unit or a list that has a lot of values or a list that's kind of dynamic and always changing because we don't necessarily know how much space to give it on the report. The other one that I really like for an option kind of like for this one specifically is the tile. This gives me these buttons. So the user can see what are all their options, but they're in these smart buttons. So they can just click the button to see it. Really good for your users who are button pushers. We all have that user. So that is where we can change the style of our slicer. Okay, how do we want to display that information to the user? How it functions is exactly the same, doesn't matter. But how do we display it to the user? Perfect. So now we've given them a slicer to choose what they want the selected column to be, but let's give them a slicer to start allowing them to choose what data they're looking at. So the first slicer that we're going to create is one for the year. So in order to choose the year, we're going to just go ahead, choose the white space of your canvas, go to your calendar table. The calendar table, again, is it's a custom table to this data model. But this allows us to have all the ability to slice and dice by dates. So we love this. I'm going to go to the fiscal subfolder in there. So I'm going to go to the calendar table, the fiscal subfolder, and I'm going to find year. And I know that's my field. So let's add another slicer. We're going to do the same steps. Click in the white space of your canvas and build the visual from top to bottom. So visualizations, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to find the slicer visual, and then I'm going to add the field called year in the fields well. And now I see my years. Now again, I want this to show as buttons, so we're going to change the format for this. So I'm going to go to the format your visual. I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to change the style to be tiles. I'll give you guys just a moment to catch up with me. And then I can choose 2019 for my year. And the final slicer that we want to do, I want the user to be able to choose the period that they're looking at. So how do we choose the period? We can go through the same steps, guys. We can focus on the canvas, start the visualizations pane and go through it. Or what we can do is leverage one that we've already set up. So go ahead, focus on your year slicer, and I'm just going to do a copy paste. That way I don't have to do the settings and set it all up that way. So I'm just going to I'm going to go to the three dots, or I'm sorry, I'm going to focus on it. I'm going to use my keyboard. Control C for copy. Control V is in Victor to paste. I'm just going to drag that down. Now it does look like it just has 2019 on two different filters. Don't worry about that. This is what they call cross filtering. It's going to clean itself up here in a second. So just do that so you have two slicers that look the same for year. So I did a copy paste, Control C, Control V. Then I clicked on the little ellipsis, the three dots in the top right corner, and just did a drag and drop so it's not on top of each other. Now we want to change which field that slicer is built over. So with the focus on your slicer, go back to the format your visual, and down where you see fields, it has year. Just go ahead and hit the X to get rid of year. And I'm going to choose period description or period num on there. Now I have my numbers. This is what they call a smart sizing box. If you resize that, you'll see that those boxes change size, change shape, and it'll automatically reposition those for you. Perfect. So now we've learned how the basic terminology of Power BI. We've created a visual. This is a table visual where we have our different values in here. We have a base measure, we have our time-based measures, and then we have a selected measure. We finally have added some slicers so that the user could interact with the data and choose which period, which year do they want to see, and then ultimately for the selected column, which time dimension do they want to see, a month to date, a quarter to date, or a year to date. So now we are doing awesome. We've got a really good foundation and we can really jump in now and start looking at how do we build out these Power BI reports, okay? How do we take this and really create things for our users? So what are we going to want them to see? So we're going to build out a report.